It happened in broad daylight, under a sky so bright it almost seemed cruel. Before noon, the county agricultural co-op nailed a bright red foreclosure notice to the gate of a 60-acre sunflower farm while dozens of people stood nearby pretending not to stare. Some whispered that the boy who owned it had finally run out of miracles. Others laughed as tractors rolled past, convinced that by sunset another family dream would be buried beneath unpaid debt. None of them imagined that the same field they had already declared worthless would soon become the reason the entire farm survived, and that every acre they mocked would teach the county what determination truly looked like. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances still have the power to change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us never to give up on people. Colton Mercer was only 17 when responsibility landed on his shoulders far heavier than any grown man should ever have carried. His father had suffered a devastating stroke 2 summers earlier, leaving him unable to work the land he had loved for decades. His mother spent every daylight hour caring for her husband while trying to stretch every remaining dollar across grocery bills, fuel costs, medicine, and property taxes. Every sunrise found Colton walking into the sunflower fields alone, carrying more hope than equipment. The 60 acres surrounding the weathered farmhouse glowed with beautiful golden blossoms every summer, but beauty could not convince lenders to wait for overdue payments. The county had endured several disappointing harvest seasons. Seed prices climbed. Fuel costs rose even higher. Processing companies lowered their purchase prices while demanding stricter quality standards. Larger commercial farms survived because they had contracts and financial reserves. Smaller family farms disappeared one after another. Every auction became another gathering where neighbors silently watched generations of hard work disappear beneath an auctioneer's voice. Colton knew every inch of those sunflower fields. He remembered chasing butterflies between the rows when he was 6. He remembered his father lifting him onto an old tractor with dirt-covered hands and telling him that every seed carried a promise. Those memories kept him moving whenever exhaustion threatened to win. Unfortunately, memories could not convince the local co-op to extend another line of credit. The board reviewed his account one final time during a morning meeting and concluded that the Mercers represented too much financial risk. Their recommendation spread through town before lunchtime. Suppliers refused additional seed purchases without cash. Equipment repairs required payment up front. Even neighbors who cared deeply for the family quietly admitted they believed the farm was finished. One elderly farmer named Wallace Benton stopped beside the fence during a sunny afternoon and looked across the endless yellow blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. He had farmed for over 50 years and understood hardship better than most. Although he could offer little financially, he offered something more valuable. He offered respect. He quietly told Colton that the flowers themselves might not be the answer anymore. Everyone sold seeds. Everyone harvested for the same buyers. Maybe surviving meant finding value where everyone else saw waste. Those words settled into Colton's thoughts like seeds themselves. For days he researched every opportunity available from the public library's computers during the afternoons after fieldwork. He discovered small farmers overseas earning far more by pressing sunflower seeds into cooking oil instead of selling raw harvests. Bottled sunflower oil brought several times the value of untreated seeds, especially among families searching for locally produced foods. The idea seemed impossible. Oil presses cost money. Bottling required permits. Labels required printing. Marketing required customers. Everything required cash he didn't possess. Still, impossible sounded better than surrender. He searched classified advertisements every afternoon until one listing caught his attention. An aging mechanical oil press sat abandoned inside an old grain warehouse nearly 80 miles away. It had belonged to a retired farmer who simply wanted someone to use it instead of letting rust consume it. The machine looked ancient. Its paint had almost disappeared. Its gears squealed loudly. Its motor barely started. But the owner smiled after hearing Colton's story and accepted an amount barely large enough to cover scrap value. The hardest part became transporting it home. Friends who had once doubted the farm quietly appeared with trailers, chains, and pickup trucks. Some never spoke much. They simply worked beneath the bright afternoon sun until the heavy machine finally rested inside the Mercer equipment shed. Everyone admitted it probably would never work. Colton refused to agree. Every afternoon after tending the fields, he cleaned each gear, replaced worn bearings with salvaged parts, polished rusted fittings, studied repair manuals, and patiently rebuilt the forgotten machine piece by piece. His hands became blistered. His clothes remained stained with grease. Every mistake taught another lesson. His father, still unable to walk far, watched from the farmhouse porch every sunny day. Though words came slowly after his stroke, pride still shined clearly in his eyes. Weeks later, sunlight streamed through the shed windows as Colton poured the first basket of sunflower seeds into the repaired press. Nothing happened. The belt slipped. The gears jammed. The motor stalled. Hours disappeared beneath frustrating repairs. Most people would have quit. Colton simply tried again. Then, just after midday, a slow golden stream finally emerged from the spout. Fresh sunflower oil glistened like liquid sunlight. Nobody cheered. Nobody celebrated wildly. Colton simply stared quietly as tears rolled down his dusty face. Months of fear, doubt, and relentless work had finally become something real. His mother held the first warm bottle as though it contained far more than oil. It contained another chance. Selling it proved just as difficult. Local grocery stores declined. Restaurants ignored him. Wholesale buyers laughed at such tiny production. Instead of giving up, Colton spent every daylight weekend attending local farmers' markets. He arranged simple wooden tables beneath white tents and offered cooking samples made with fresh bread dipped into his sunflower oil. Customers noticed the flavor immediately. It tasted cleaner, fresher, lighter. People asked questions. They admired the story behind every bottle. Instead of buying anonymous products shipped across the country, they purchased something grown just a few miles away by someone they could meet face to face. One customer returned with friends. Those friends returned with relatives. A local bakery began ordering several gallons weekly. Soon afterward, a nearby restaurant replaced imported oil with Colton's fresh production, proudly advertising locally pressed sunflower oil on every menu. Word spread faster than anyone expected. Newspaper photographers arrived during bright afternoon harvests. Regional food bloggers featured the farm. Home cooks praised both quality and freshness. Demand quickly outpaced production. Ironically, the same co-op that had written off the Mercer farm noticed something unusual. Members started asking whether the organization could distribute Colton's bottled oil. The request embarrassed several board members who remembered voting against extending his credit. They visited the farm expecting a modest operation. Instead, they discovered volunteers helping bottle oil, neighbors delivering empty glass containers, retired mechanics maintaining equipment, and smiling customers loading cases into their vehicles. Failure had somehow become the busiest farm in the county. The co-op chairman walked slowly through rows of blooming sunflowers one brilliant afternoon, realizing every prediction had been wrong. He admitted privately that they had judged numbers instead of determination. More importantly, they had underestimated imagination. During their next public meeting, the board voted unanimously to restore the Mercer account and offer financing for expanded production. Many expected Colton to reject the offer out of resentment. Instead, he accepted with gratitude. Bitterness had nearly destroyed enough families already. He refused to let it destroy his. Expansion happened carefully rather than recklessly. Additional presses increased production. Neighboring struggling farmers began planting sunflowers under fair purchasing agreements with Colton's growing business instead of abandoning their land. Rather than competing against them, he created opportunity beside them. Within 2 years, dozens of local families earned reliable income supplying seeds to the Mercer oil operation. Empty barns reopened. Idle tractors returned to work. Young families delayed selling ancestral farmland because they finally had dependable buyers again. The transformation reached beyond economics. Hope itself returned. Even Wallace Benton, whose simple advice had planted the original idea, smiled proudly while watching trucks leave the farm loaded with neatly packed bottles carrying a modest label featuring a golden sunflower and one simple phrase, "Every seed deserves a chance." Visitors often assumed the successful processing building represented the family's greatest achievement. They were mistaken. The true achievement stood across the road where 60 acres of bright sunflowers continued blooming exactly where foreclosure notices had once been nailed. Colton never removed the faded red notice he had carefully taken from the old gate. Instead, he framed it inside the processing building. Not as a reminder of failure. As proof that someone else's conclusion never has to become your destiny. School groups began visiting every harvest season during sunny afternoons. Children learned how seeds became cooking oil. More importantly, they learned that setbacks often hide opportunities invisible to everyone except those willing to keep working. Colton always encouraged them to ask questions, dream boldly, and refuse to measure themselves by the opinions of people who quit believing too soon. His father gradually regained enough strength to walk slowly between the sunflower rows with a cane. One warm afternoon he reached the center of the field where thousands of blossoms turned together toward the sunlight. He rested one weathered hand upon his son's shoulder. No speech followed. None was necessary. Everything they had survived together surrounded them in every direction. The field no longer represented debt. It represented resilience. The oil press no longer represented an old machine rescued from rust. It represented the courage to create a new path when every familiar road had collapsed. The farm no longer belonged to a family waiting for rescue. It belonged to a family that had discovered hope grows strongest where people least expect it. Before we reach the end of this story, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us what lesson touched your heart the most, or share a time when someone underestimated you but you refused to give up. Your words may become the encouragement someone else desperately needs today. As another bright afternoon settled gently across the golden fields, visitors watched thousands of sunflowers turn together toward the sun, never looking back at the shadows behind them. The same county that had once considered those 60 acres worthless now pointed to the Mercer farm as proof that courage, creativity, and perseverance can revive not only a family but an entire community. Colton never forgot the pain of being dismissed, yet he chose compassion instead of revenge, opportunity instead of resentment, and hope instead of defeat. In doing so, he proved that the greatest harvest was never the oil flowing from an old press, it was the renewed faith growing inside every person who believed impossible dreams could still bloom. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our family and our community, where stories of kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances continue to remind us that sometimes the smallest seed grows into the brightest field of all.